Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, it's so vital to truly be able to listen to everyone's story, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and in a conversational fashion. And, you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because, quite frankly, you're listening right now. And if you are, hit subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Give us the old 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on the social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Letterboxd, the Instagram, the TikTok, and, well, probably a few other places too. At In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates, but finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it even more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that kindness and pay us a visit. On this episode, we got a good one. We have an important one. It played TIFF. It's on CBC Gem now. It's a fantastic documentary miniseries called "Telling Our Story," and it's the highlighting of the 11 different First Nations tribes that are in Quebec, and it really allows us to understand how rich and how sort of diverse the culture is. I mean, I grew up in Quebec. I did not know there were 11 different tribes in Quebec, but there you go. It's from director Kim Abomswain, and she traveled all over the province, all over the country to talk to members of all the tribes, and just to really give us an understanding of the landscape, the territory, the relationship to the land, the importance therein, and it allows us to understand, as much as there are 11 different First Nations tribes in Quebec, they are all Indigenous, and there is overlap with their stories as well, and their stories are so incredibly vital. And we had a great talk with Kim as we talked about the development of the show, how this project has transformed over different platforms, and so very much more. But check out Telling Our Story. I know it's on CBC Gem now, and it's worth seeing. It is definitely opened my eyes, and definitely feels like one of those necessary things that needs to be seen as we understand our relationship with the First Nations people of our country, and how we need to all coexist with one another. That's just, it's how we all get along. It's how life keeps chugging. But like I said, go check out Telling Our Story on CBC Gem. But first, enjoy our talk with Kim Abomswain, because quite frankly, it's a darn good one.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Kim, how you doing?
I'm good. And you?
Excellent.
Awesome.
You good for 15-ish?
Yes, I'm good.
Excellent. All right. Well, just to officially kick this off, I finally got a chance to watch the series, but just congratulations on the work, and thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate this.
Well, thanks for watching, and thanks for the interest.
Now, I guess my first question is, walk me through the origin of you wanting to make this and to tell this story, because I will admit fully, as the ignorant white guy in the room, I knew there were multiple First Nations tribes. I didn't know there were that many. Mm-hmm. So to see a number of 11 actually even just caught me off guard. Walk me through sort of wanting to tell this story.
Well, I think this is a specific. This is specific to Quebec and British Columbia to have that many First Nation. I think, in between, you have less.
No, I know, but I just meant
I understand the surprise. Yes. Well, the beginning of this long journey, the idea came from the mind of a very intelligent, brilliant person that I love. His name is Reginald Volant. He was the founder of Innu, and but he passed away weeks after we finally got the deal with Radio Canada. And his dream has always been to give the best place possible to the 11 First People of Quebec on screen. So we didn't know at the time if it would be feature length but so it became telling our story. But really, he was the mind behind the first step of the project. And a couple of weeks before he died, he made us promise that we would take this as far as we could. So that's what we did. And so right after that, we really wanted telling our story. That is a transmedia project, by the way. So there's a podcast, but there's also a full dome 360 immersion film coming and other stuff, exhibition and all of this. We really wanted not only to be about the result, but also about the process. So telling our story, it's also to take back our narrative. We say in French, souveraineté narrative. I think it would translate into narrative sovereignty. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does, yeah.
And to do that, you need to work differently. So it took longer to develop the project because we hired at every step people from the 11 First Nation. So, of course, elders and knowledge keepers at the very beginning. So we could ask them, how should we, what has to be out there? And this is when we decided to go by those 4 themes. It was really inspired by those very first meeting like 6 years ago. And then we hired 12 researchers that were really coming from the 11 First People, and they were no TV, they were not really TV researcher at all. They were people that were, studying in university or having other jobs, but that had the legitimacy. Is that correct? Legitimacy. Yeah. That's a complicated word to say. To tell us, well, if you are to go to that place, these are the person you have to meet because they are legitimate. If they tell our story, they has to be the right person. So they came back, all those 12 researchers, they all came back with recorded materials. It was over 200 hours of recordings.
Wow.
And this was the basis of what would become our material to write the scripts. And again, we formed a team of 6 writers, 3 Indigenous and 3 non-Indigenous, to write this series. So the non-Indigenous were there because they were super professional at writing series, and the 3 Indigenous who were there because of our ideas and of our knowledge on how to tell that story. So as you can see, it was a process, and until the end, we kept working that way. So, and I think this is what made the success of the series, because when you look at it, I think that you can feel the authenticity, the very intimate relation that we have with the characters because they trust us.
No, for sure.
And this is what we work the most on.
Was it always going to be multi-platform? Because I mean, just in watching it, I was struck by that organic nature. Just, it wasn't being didactic with history or facts or anything like that. It was getting us sort of quite literally sitting on the ground and listening to a story. And I mean, to me, that was the beautiful thing. Like, for you setting off on this, how important was it to not be that, like I said, sort of get into sort of that didactic idea and just sort of especially when it comes to a doc series, and really trying to make something that was more experiential. If I think that's probably the right way to put it.
I think this is because of who we are, as people. It's rooted in our worldview, philosophy, and how we teach our kids. We never, well, before there were no school. It was just oral history. It was through our foundation myth and legend that we would start to learn how to function in the world, the rules. And then, so we are true storytellers, and there are no expert on, but we're all expert of something at the same time, of a memory, and so I think by just being who we are, this is it. This is telling our story. So, and I think it's because of that team composed, that creative team that was composed of only Indigenous people, that we could put that worldview in the DNA of the series, and it shows,
Because, I mean, again, this isn't, you're not necessarily breaking it down into an Anishinaabe story or an Inuit story or a Wendat story or anything like that. I was so struck by just the unity of the fact that, no, we are Indigenous. These are our stories. And I mean, it felt like, to me, especially when you're assembling all this together, because I mean, I can imagine you crisscrossed the country more times than I can care to count. Were you kind of like, when you were sort of developing the structure and getting all this stuff together, did you know how, I guess, universal and really sort of joined it would all be, especially when you're telling the stories, particularly under the themes of territory, identity, spirituality, rebuilding?
Well, not in that extent, I would say. That was the hope, that was the goal. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've done my master, all my university studies on Indigenous questions. So yes, I've been traveling a lot in my life, but never before I traveled the 11 First People for the same project, in a very dense moment over 2 years. Well, because of the pandemic, took longer, but still. So I could see, going from one place to another, how people would respond to themselves and complete each other, or add to someone, or just repeat the same thing. And it was so interesting because I could see the editing going in my head, and I was like, this is gonna work, this is, because at the same time we're exposing how rich our cultures are, so different languages, different know-hows, but at the same time, the same worldview, same values, same philosophy of same relationship to the land. So it was very, very enlightening. And this is as much of a personal quest as a professional quest for me. Like growing up as a Abenaki woman in a city, having a grandfather who went through the residential school, and so a father that was cut from that culture and identity, who couldn't teach me. This is the story of so many. So that journey was so amazing for me, and I'm so grateful.
Did you manage to balance, because I can imagine on one end, yes, obviously you're going through this very spiritual journey and discovering all these things and really sort of, broadening yourself and getting a greater understanding. But at the same time, I can imagine there is the filmmaker side of you who can kind of see the stories unfolding, and also just knowing, if something's working or if something's not working. Like, how did you manage to kind of balance those two sides of yourself?
That's an interesting question. I think they both goes together. I could be Kiem Obumsawin learning at the same time as I was seeing the editing in my head.
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah, that would be my answer.
No, and I mean, that's interesting too, because I mean, again, I guess I'm just relating it back to sort of the idea of storytelling, because it's so ingrained in the culture. I can imagine that it's something that you don't necessarily have to separate, because I mean, again, you're not separating the filmmaker side from your indigenous side, because they're so intertwined with sort of the nature of who you are as a person that you don't have to.
Exactly. Yeah. I've never thought about this before. Thank you.
No, but I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, we have seen films be made and documentaries be made, about indigenous peoples and sort of various things that have happened, plus with the residential schools and everything like that. And sometimes they come off very genuine and very heartfelt, but sometimes they come off very didactic and just kind of off-putting, if that's the right word. But I mean, when I saw this, it felt so warm and natural just to sort of have these moments where we can kind of sit and just get an understanding of the land. And I mean, as you've been sort of, this is out now on Gem, and you did that, you were at the festival, how has the reaction been from audiences? Because I mean, I can imagine this being sort of not only eye-opening, but also very kind of emotionally diverse as well.
Can you repeat your question? I'm sorry.
Just in terms of, I guess, audience reaction, because it's one of those things where we have had a history of films about indigenous people in residential schools, and I mean, so sort of a wide varying, of topics that have come off as, sometimes emotionally relevant, sometimes as sort of didactic and almost off-putting. But when I was watching this, it felt so warm and it felt so inviting. And I mean, I'm kind of curious how the audience reaction has been, because like I said, it is on Gem and you were at the festival. I can imagine you've had a wide range of experiences from people who have seen this.
Well, actually, TIFF gave me that, because we launched that series on Radio-Canada, of course,
right.
And we did some screening, but very privately. So, of course, after the launch on Radio-Canada, I had comments, people would write and telling me that, but this relation that you have with the public after a screening, I didn't really had it before TIFF. I really had the chance to experience it for real at TIFF. And I'm more of a feature length film,
right? Yeah.
Girl. So when we released the show, I was like, oh, this is TV. So I'm never gonna have that relationship, and that. So this was weird. So I was really happy that we went to TIFF because of that. And you're right, and the reason why I wanted to do a TV show was to go get those people, because when you come out with a film and the people have the choice, they buy a ticket and they decide and they go and they watch and they sit and they don't leave, Normally, if everything goes well, they will stay and watch. So but when you have your remote,
you're inherently going to get a broader audience. I understand.
So I really wanted to do something that people would like to watch, after a long working day, not like be too cerebral, just something coming from the heart. And so this was an objective, but also this is also who we are. So when we speak about ourselves, it's never didactic. It
right.
comes from the heart. So I think it was natural, but also we really made that choice of, we talk about tough stuff in the series. We don't say it never happened, of course.
Yeah.
But the objective was really to celebrate ourselves and our culture and our languages, and how cool our people are. So yeah, so thank you for that. That means I won, that was the main objective. But yes, at TIFF, this is what people told us, like it's an easy watch.
Yeah.
For most part of it, I think. And there was people from all over the world. Of course, this is TIFF and this is Toronto. And so people from Hawaii would say, you have to take this. You told my story. So, and when I was creating that story, that series, I knew that like just that worldview, that philosophy, that relationship to the land would be the same as the other first people around the world.
For sure. Yeah.
And we were very happy with the comment we had after TIFF, because this is what we receive as comment.
Now, I mean, just to start putting a bow on this, does the podcast and the other dimensions of this project add different layers, or is it just more an extension thereof?
No, it's completely different because we did it before.
Okay.
We were supposed to start by the Docu-series, but then COVID happened, so it was easier to start with the podcast.
Okay.
Smaller team, no big rigs, so it was a team of 2. We sent them on the road, and they did it. And actually, it helped us afterward, but it's not structured the same way. So the way it's done, it's that we try to it's telling our twisted history, and so we chose 11 words that are colonized, and we try to decolonize them one word at a time. So each episode is centered.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's very different, but the idea is the same, is to tell who we are through a word, and how, like, discovery, what it means. So some of them, we took them back in the series, like discovery, but others, like Pocahontas or Reserve or Bible, or are very genuine to the podcast.
I like that. That sounds so interesting. But I mean, Kim, just thank you so much for the time. And I mean, and thank you for the work. I mean, this was such an inviting launch that really gave me, I guess the best way to put it is I guess maybe more of an understanding of what it means to be First Nations, and just sort of the relationship to the land and how important it is. And it's one of those things where, I mean, as the white guy in the room, like, I could say I knew, but this helped me feel like I understood it a little bit, if that makes any kind of sense.
Well, it's really good to hear. Very, very nice to hear.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. And but I mean, that's it for me. But honestly, thank you again for the time, and congrats on the work. I hope more and more people get to see this show and listen to the podcast too.
Yeah, of course.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.